Smith, and I am the Vice President of Marketing here at iRobot. I've been with the company for 11 years, and so I've learned a lot about robots during my time. This is our cool stuff room. This room was designed to showcase all of our amazing robots over time. Some people don't realize how long it takes to develop and how many things that we have to build to be successful, how many things might not actually make it to product, but that's okay because we've learned from each and everything here. Starting with the very, very beginning, which is what this space is. So this actual robot here is one of the very first robots that Colin Engel, our CEO, ever made. And the thing that's really important about this robot, and we do a lot of school tours and talk to students, is that sometimes they think that first robot is going to look like this right off the bat, but really it's about popsicle sticks, rulers, and duct tape, right? It's about having a concept, putting something together and trying to prove out that concept that it can work. And then becomes the idea of designing it in terms of long time wear, how it would have to work in that environment, but understanding what it's trying to do and make something that can work. So that's one of Colin's very first robots. It's called Feature. These two robots, Genghis and Hermes, are two of our very early robots, and they've had a tremendous amount of impact on the robotics community. The Genghis was designed and modeled for space exploration and was displayed at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum for a long period of time. Colin actually did a lot of work on trying to figure out how to get robots into space to explore, working at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. So those robots, as you can see, have an insect kind of motivation behind them or inspiration, and we take a lot of our inspiration from nature, and those robots certainly are no different. These two robots down here are from some of our industrial work. We have, this is the MicroRig. Some of its earlier name internally was also called Borat. That's a little known fact. And then this robot was called R2. This robot was designed to work in nuclear plants. It's a dangerous place, different levels of radiation. You're not sure what's going on if you need to move things around. This robot was designed to do those types of tasks, keeping people at a safe distance. This robot was designed to go through oil wells while they were still pumping and gather important information. The cool thing there was that it was able to do that while they were working and not having to shut them down, which would shut oil production down. So being able to actually go in and work. If you can see, these rollers top and bottom allowed them to navigate throughout. And this actually would have been a lot longer, but we just have a section of it here. This type of design actually helped us develop the robot that we made for National Geographic to go and search inside the pyramids. And the idea of having that ability to navigate using wheels on the top and bottom, or tracks on the top and the bottom, depending on its need. Moving down here is some of my favorite early robots, ItBit. So as you can see here, it was actually the first robot on the cover of National Geographic back in 1997. And this was designed to study facial expressions. So when we're talking about robots and if we can make them emotionally responsive, we found out a lot about how important eyebrows are and how important different pieces of the facial expression is versus just eyes going left to right or up and down. And that led us to, I'm going to show you and peel back the baby's face. Don't think I'm some evil horror film person, but it's kind of creepy here. But when you look at this, you can see all of the different places in which the baby's face is attached to the skin. I do feel a little bit like I'm in a horror film, but whenever I do this. But the idea here is that they could attach in different places, and so that the baby could actually show emotion by its eyebrows going up, or its brow furrowing, or when he smiles, the cheeks kind of go up. And so the idea that the baby doll could actually have some real type emotion, as well as the fact that the eyes move left to right. And very Chucky-esque, unfortunately, but very cool that they actually really, when someone spoke and you could have voice recognition, it turned its eyes, really felt like you were having a real experience with a doll. These robots down here are called Geckos and Holland, and they were really about exploring different types of movement and mobility. So these robots are made to climb walls. And the idea here is these are different suction cups, and you would pull and push air through the suction cup, which would allow it to climb a wall, a glass surface, a wet surface, a slippery surface, without losing traction and carrying a heavy weight. We actually, this robot here, were able to attach a 6-pack of soda to it and have it climb a glass wall, which is a tremendous amount of weight for something this light to be able to carry. And so that was a project that we worked on a number of years ago. And this robot here This actually is a visual prototype. The idea here was that all of these different pieces would be able to rotate and turn, and so the robot could get into a number of different shapes and configurations, from lying completely flat to standing up, based off of all of these different configurations of its legs, based on these different joints. And so the idea became, when we look at mobility, is it just wheels? Is it just legs? Is it just tracks? No, there's infinite numbers of ways that we can move around in this world. Let's look at how some things happen in nature and how we can mimic that. So you saw the baby doll. That led us to this partnership with Hasbro. And we created My Real Baby, which was, had real reaction. So if you tickled her stomach, she laughed. If you tickled her feet, she laughed. If she needed a bottle, she'd cry. And her brow would furrow and her face would look so sad. And you had to find out what was wrong. She had sensors in her mouth to know if she was being fed. She had a light sensor in her diaper area. So if she needed a diaper change, unless that light sensor was activated, she would continue to cry. The other amazing thing about her was that she learned over time. So when you first got the doll, she just kind of oohed and awed. And then one day she'd look at the little girl and say, "Mama." It was amazing to see kids' reactions to that. We also learned a bit about manufacturing and how important a nickel was when you're manufacturing dolls and the quantity that you are, and the importance of price point. And so we learned a lot from our partnership with Hasbro. We also learned a lot about marketing robots. When this doll is sitting on a shelf for $89, and next to it is another baby doll for $10, that, let's be honest, may be a little cuter. What's going to make them pull it off the shelves? So we learned a lot about how to actually talk about our robots and get them to be something that people want to take off of the shelf. We did some amazing stuff with toys early on. We no longer have a toy department, much to the dismay of many people here. But toys are really fun to work on. These robots here were designed way back in 2000, I believe. And the idea here was to have robots that could be virtual pets. And I know people had seen the Sony dog and all the others. These sensors up here, anything that looks like it's copper, is actually a touch sensor. So the robot would know how it was being played with. The skin over the robot would look, it's tied down, would look something like this. The skin would look something like this, and be over this. And so the robot would know if it was being petted and it was nice, and his eyes would glow green and he'd be all happy. If you were mean to him, if you smacked him or you hit him, his eyes would glow red and he'd snap at you. He also had the ability to follow around. Inside of his mouth, you can see there's a tongue here, so he would know if he was being fed. He had a little thing and he would chomp down on it. Very, very fun, very cool robot to have in the office chasing you about. These robots here, up top, are our Create robots. These are educational robots. We got a lot of people early on with our Roomba that wanted to just hack it. They were literally buying it, taking out the vacuuming guts, as you will, and just modifying the robot. And we realized that there really weren't a lot of inexpensive mobility platforms out there for hobbyists. And so that's what we did. We took the vacuuming guts out, we added another wheel on the back, and then we made it so that there was a command center here and people could actually modify and do whatever they wanted. We did a fun little internal contest, which is where these came from. So this was, someone wanted one to pick up their dirty socks, and so this one would find and then sniff out and pick up dirty socks. This came out of our India office. This is a Rangoli robot where it would actually, using an old dot matrix printer, they would fill it with different colored sands, and then they could program in a design, and the robot would put designs onto the floor for openings and different fun things. That was kind of cool. We had a whole bunch. We had one that would go into a refrigerator, open it, and identify the appropriate beverage that the person wanted. We had one that would follow somebody. They put a laundry basket on top and a sensor on their ankle, and the robot would actually follow them and bring their laundry downstairs, down the hall for them. So lots of really cool things came out of that.
What about these?
You want to see these guys?
Yeah, the fuzzy ones.
I'm still anxious for these to actually someday happen. So these were called Meeps. As you can see, I clearly pay attention to signs. So Meeps were robots that we had developed early on as toys, and the idea here is that they're voice activated. And so Meep would be kind of rolling around the floor, and you could say, "Come here, Meep, Meep," and he'd go, "Meep, Meep," and he'd come towards you. And if you yelled at him, you're like, "Wah!" He'd go, "Wah!" and he'd run and he'd hide to a dark place. And so that was kind of a very early voice activated idea for a robot.
Would they interact with each other?
So yeah, the idea is that they could eventually, and so if you had a bunch of them, they would kind of come together, beep, 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 and then again, a loud voice, and they'd kind of scoot out. So I still think that they're really cool. And since I have a daughter who's 2, I'd really like them. So over here, now we're getting into kind of our actual cleaning robots. A lot of people look at this before it was on the floor and they thought that we just had left our cleaning devices or hanging around. Not true. This was actually our earliest cleaning robot that we had designed with Johnson Wax Professional, and the idea here was to have it working in industrial spaces. What we learned here was a lot about cleaning, right? So we had a lot of engineers on the ground, laying on the grounds at Targets and Walmarts trying to figure out about cleaning. And then we had all that learning from Hasbro. And those two pieces together really helped get us to Roomba. So understanding the importance of a very, very good, thorough clean on top of how to manufacture for general masses public, able to bring together something so that we can make our Roomba product. This is one of our very earliest prototypes of Roomba, not something that most people get to see. Let's bring him down. And the idea here from the original was that there actually wasn't a vacuum. That was a space for a Swiffer cloth type product, right? So you'd put a cloth here and drive it around the floor. See how thin the wheels are. There isn't a lot of ability for it to go up or down or over different obstacles. And the idea here, once we were going out and testing it to folks, so you want us to pay what for a Swiffer, right? So if it was a vacuum cleaner now, then that makes more sense, but it's not actually vacuuming. So we said, okay, back to the drawing board. Let's get some vacuuming power in there. And so then we came out with the very first Roomba. Another interesting point, I don't know if you've seen this, it doesn't actually say robot on it anywhere. Oh, that one does, I'm sorry, so that's not the very first one. The first one's actually said intelligent floor vac. They look just like that, but they said intelligent floor vac because our early studies told us that people were afraid of robots. So we've come a long way in the robot acceptance in the last almost 10 years. So we over time have evolved into our newer set of robots, which are beautiful. Again, that one button simplicity. So you just hit the same button to power it on and hit clean. Now they can dock themselves, they can recharge, they can go back out on a cleaning cycle, so you can say every day at 2 I want my house clean, and it will take care of it for you. Turns on its own virtual walls, uses them as lighthouses. It's a much, much different robot. This is one of our, again, earlier prototyping robots. And the idea here, as you can see she's named Daisy, is that we would put a lot of the internals on the outside so that they could modify real time as they were testing these things in the early days. It was very expensive to prototype then. Now we have 3D printers, which makes it a lot easier, quicker. But back then, you can also see the spray painting around. These are some of our sensors. We'll test different colors for bumpers because sensors react differently to different lights, reflection, certainly if it's an optical sensor. And so we would have to sometimes test the different types of colors we were planning to use on bumpers. Make sure that they worked out. Now, let me come on over here. This is some of our research area. Some of our very small Landroid robots, which now have become our first look robots, very small. The idea was that they would be about a pound, and that soldiers or warfighters could put them in the pockets in their pants and carry them, and then take them out and throw them if they need it. And the idea was that they could create their own networks for them, for the soldier. Over here, this is, I think, very, very cool. This is a zip mask payload, and what happens here with our PackBots, the idea was that we wanted to be able to put different payloads on, so that the warfighter, depending on what they were encountering, they could have different payloads for what they needed. This zip mask all lies flat here within the robot, so it would go on the PackBot, which is right over there, and could come up and see over 8 feet. So if you're trying to see over a wall, you have no idea what's on the other side of this enormous wall. This thing could literally, even though it lies, I mean, what is that, 4 inches, 5 inches maybe, could actually extend up to over 8 feet tall. I can give you a visual of what's on the other side. This robot, this is a robot design, looking at very similar to kind of the idea of an inchworm. And the idea here is that it can lie almost completely flat and then move similar to that of an inchworm. So the idea was if you needed to get under a door, is this is an easy way to get underneath the door. And with the power of something like a watch battery, does it have enough power to not only make it move, but also with cameras now being as small as they are, cell phone cameras, etc., could you put a little camera on here and get some great visual with movement, be able to move around a room. Some of these, again, very basic early proof of concept. This robot is really crazy, squishy gel. I don't know if you've seen this guy before. Yeah. But it's, wish you could feel it. I mean, this thing, you gotta feel this thing. Anyway, the idea, again, it almost looks like arteries coming in and out, but that's all through air being pushed in and pulled back, being able to change the shape of that. Similar to this, the gripper, the idea here that manipulation with fingers is very difficult, lots of joints. If you want to pick something up, like in order to pick this up, I'm kind of, where can I get this? This robot, which is very soft inside, it's just little granules, could be coffee, could be any small sand. You put it over it, if this robot went like this, and then the air sucked out and it becomes rigid, it holds on to a little piece and can lift almost anything up in one basic step of just putting air in and pulling air out. You can go from a very soft to a solid form, forming around anything it's trying to lift and make it very simple to make manipulation. So we have a great R&D department that looks at all different types of challenges and figures out ways to overcome them. Some of our early robots, again, this is Ariel, which is made to look like a crab. And the idea here is that the robot was looking for mines in surf zones. And so the idea is he can crawl along in those very dangerous places. And if it found a mine, it would bury itself over it and blow it up. So really cool technology, a lot of testing done on this guy on the beaches. There was actually a story we heard where it was testing, blown up, it had lost. The cool thing is if it lost a limb, it changed its gait, similar to a crab would in nature. And it had lost 5 of its legs, had 1 left in the front and was pulling itself along the beach, trying to keep going. And they actually called it off because they said the test was inhumane. So that was really interesting, again, how people, because they're moving independently on their own, they anthropomorphize the robots pretty quickly. So this brings us to our PackBots and our Seigni. These are our more our popular military robots. It all started with Irby, this guy. The idea that the robot in '98 was developed for DARPA to be this rugged, man-portable robot. From that, we designed PackBot. PackBot had those interchangeable heads. There's spaces in here that you can put different payloads. So that zip mask we saw earlier could fit inside of here. It could have a 7-foot arm that can extend up and do EOD detonation or removal. This head here is for multiple cameras. There's 4 cameras on that side, 1 on this side. We also had sniper detection heads. We had a number of different payloads, and still do, that can go on top of that. Interesting little story is we sent one of our engineers over to Afghanistan to help integrate them into the warfighters, and they kept telling us before that they wanted one lighter. We're like, it's fine, it's really light, it's only like 55, 60 pounds. These are big, strong guys, come on. So as soon as our guy got over there, they strapped one of these in a backpack for him and made him go on a hike in the desert. He called back almost immediately and said, you guys need to make these things lighter. From that came our Seigni, which is our small unmanned ground vehicle, which is much lighter and smaller, about 35 pounds. And the idea here is that it is actually man-portable. So get it nice and small and light. They can actually have in a backpack if they need to, deploy at a moment's notice, still have all the capabilities. There's many capabilities as PackBot. And we also were able to determine the different types of missions they were going on with these and have specific configurations for those missions. So that's the Seigni. We have our maritime robots over here. This is SeaGlider. SeaGlider is something that we worked with the University of Washington on. So the idea here is that it's made to go underwater, can go on missions for up to 9 months without having to come back for a battery recharge, which is amazing. It uses buoyancy to do that. It has I hate saying this, it has a gas bladder inside that it slides on a track inside and it changes its buoyancy. So it actually uses currents as well as being able to go down and up, and then it sends a signal back up to the scientist who's gathering the information or data that's coming back from it for whatever it's testing. This was the robot in the spill, in the Gulf oil spill, that detected that there were actually plumes of oil. So where they had said the oil was just on the surface, we were able to determine with scientists using our product that the oil had actually sunk and was sinking into the ocean's floor or depths. These robots are our rangers, very similar to the idea behind the PackBot, that you could put different things inside the body of the robot. And it's made to fit into, you guessed it, a torpedo shell. So the idea here is that you could deploy it with ship's infrastructure already in place. Here, our gator. And the idea here is an autonomous vehicle. And so, actually, if you want to come around, I'll show you something most people don't ever see because they don't get on this. But come on in here. And so you can see the buttons there where it says manual or auto, right? This is pre-Google car stuff, right? The idea here is that you would literally flick the switch from either manual drive to autonomous. And the robot could be completely autonomous or semi-autonomous. There's a little computer over there. You could give it a GPS waypoint. The robot would find it on its own. Or you could drive it. It also had following ability, so the robot could follow you if you needed it to. Keep hands away from steering wheel while in autonomous mode. So this was back in '04. We actually had these. Another fun thing was that we used to test them in the parking lot. And it used to really scare the other people in our business park because all of a sudden they'd come outside and there's a vehicle driving itself completely autonomously. Yeah, good times. But that's what these red buttons are for. Those are emergency stops if we need them. But some pretty amazing technology that we're able to think lots of use for autonomous vehicles. The idea here was military or farming. So if you were an American farmer, it's very expensive to try to maintain. But if you had a number of these that could bring crops and then bring them back to the farm and somebody could unload them and then they could come back to you without having to have a person driving them back and forth, that's some pretty cool technology.
2004 was a long time ago for.
Can you believe that? 8 years.
Yeah.
And so then this is kind of our telepresence area as well as our swarm bots. Telepresence is something that we've long wanted to do at iRobot. It started back with the iRobot LE in 2002, which is this guy. The idea here was the camera, be able to go up and down stairs with this configuration here, and so you could connect to people in your home if you weren't there. Now the problem in 2002 was that most people did not have wireless in their home yet, so we're a little ahead of our time. In 2007, we took that platform that we knew worked with mobility, which was the Roomba, and then we made some modifications. We added a couple of cameras and some other things so that you could actually call someone and check in with them through the robot. What we learned there was that one-way video wasn't as appealing to people. People wanted two-way video. They wanted to see who they were talking to. So as technology changes and evolves over time, we're able to make modifications to this, and I believe you're going to see a demo of Ava in a little bit, which is kind of where we are today on it. This is a swarm bot. This was some amazing stuff that we did early on with swarms of robots. And we had a swarm of over 100 robots that could communicate with each other. And it was using this technology we created called ISIS. And basically, if you look here, there's 3 little lights in here on all 4 sides. And what happens is, just like swarms of ants or bees, the robots connect to the robot closest to them. And they communicate. So one of them is a self-assigned leader. And you can determine the leader by saying lowest number. All of them had names, alphabetical, whatever, but they'd self-assign a leader. And they'd have a task, and they'd go out and do the task. Now, if the leader's battery died or it fell off of a cliff or something, it would self-assign a new leader. They would also be aware of what other technologies were on these swarms. So the idea being that in the future, we could have, if we had that technology, which really was just what was on top of the robot, this is just a mobility platform to test this wonderfulness up here in the software. And the idea was if we could put that on PackBots. Imagine if there was a chemical scare in a subway. You'd send a swarm of robots down, and these robots could work together, and they could, one might have a chemical sniffer, and so they say, I think I found something. It calls over the robot with the chemical sniffer, comes over, says, yes, there is a chemical detected, this is the area that's been affected, and then a robot that hadn't been in that affected area goes up top and says, here's the deal. We've got this chemical in this affected area. Probably wouldn't say that here's the deal. That's me. And then it would be able to be contained, all without a human being put in harm's way. Pretty cool. Also cool applications for homes. Imagine if you had swarms of robots maintaining your home for you. That'd be pretty cool. So, some amazing technologies. So that's our cool stuff room. I hope you enjoyed it. It was my pleasure showing it to you.
Thanks. Awesome. Thank you.